Hi, my name is Benjamin Zorko, and we will be doing a little bit of a slideshow here on just really the basics of note reading for beginners. We're going to start with some note values and how we start to read scores and music, sheet music. Then we'll dig into a little bit of placement for the notes when reading, as well as at the end here, we'll tie it all together and we'll go over a little bit of rhythm in counting and how that works. So, yeah, here we go. Note values. So, note values, basic musical note values represent the duration of a sound or the silence in a piece of music. In other words, when notes are being played, it's how long they're being played or not being played, such as rests or dotted notes or some. There are certain syncopations where you end up pulling off a little bit early or actually holding a little bit longer. They're in an order, as you can see here, starting from the very top here. Let's see if I can get the pointer out. Right here, you have the whole note, and that is going to be the longest of the note values. And as you can see, everything stems from that. So from the whole note, we go down and we have a half note. Okay? The half note, it takes two half notes to make up the whole note. Pretty straightforward there. And from there, it spurs again. And these are what we call quarter notes. So the quarter notes, it takes 4 of them to make the whole, 2 of them to make the half. Does that make sense? So we go from a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 individual notes to make up the whole note at the peak there. So divisible by 4 is a quarter. Now we divide that whole note by 8, and what do we get? We get 8th notes. So the quarters and half again are an eighth, right? So we're talking fractions here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 eighth notes to make up that whole note. So 2 eighths per quarter, 2 quarters per half, and 2 halves per whole. It's just broken down in half again and again and again per the value of each note. And then its counterpart that we have here is going to be musical rests and values. Starting from the top, just like the last slide there, up here at the very top, let's go up here. I don't know why the pointer's lagging a little bit. The whole note, we call these hat rests. They look like little hats. The one that is got the top of the hat facing down is going to be your whole, which, just like the last slide that we did there, is the longest of the rests. And again, everything stems from this whole rest. Okay? So then the next would be the half, which these hats are flipped up the correct way. So when you see the little hat there in the measure downwards, that's going to be the whole rest. So we read this little excerpt on the left here that I wrote out here. So rest symbols in music represent periods of silence, with each symbol corresponding to a specific duration, just like the musical notes. They are essential for creating the rhythm and the phrasing, serving as the opposite of the notes in which they indicate where the sound is absent. So this is where the sound is absent. This is, like I was saying, where it's broken up. You may be playing like a da, rest, 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 da. That's where this would be written in, is in that rest period, where you're going to end up not playing anything. And these allow for you to do phrasing. These allow for you to break up the sections. This allows you to bring instruments in, to take instruments out, to have harmonies, to have different layers of music, really, where things are coming and going, and being able to read that on the music of when to come in, when to stay back. It is integral as part of sheet reading of music. So the common rests include the whole rest, which is 4 Bs. Up here, the hat, that's upside down. Then you get the half rests. See, that whole rest is made up of 2 half rests. Okay, then you have the quarter rest, which that is going to be half of the half rest. So imagine you're going from 4 to 2 to 1. Okay, then you've got the 8th rest, which that is 2 per quarter note. You have a 16th, we didn't get that far with the last one, and a 32nd. So it just stems, and it breaks down each individual rest here. Not as a whole, it's just breaking down each rest. Each has its own symbol, so this is how we read. It's like reading words, but reading images, so we know what to do. Beautiful. All right. So here is the treble clef. This one is very popular. I would say that majority of people have seen this clef. This indicates the pitch in which you're playing, as well as note placement. The treble clef here acts as a key to show which notes correspond on the lines, including on the musical staff, which the music is written. So this is going to indicate per different instruments as well here, common instruments. It's frequently used for instruments that have a higher pitch range, such as guitar, violin, flute, upper register, and the upper register of the piano. The piano is split up into 2 registers. You have your right hand up here from the middle C, from the very middle of the piano, to the right is going to be read in a treble clef, and via the left side of that middle of the piano is going to be read in the next slide here is the bass clef. Treble clef is definitely, I don't know if there's more instruments that use the treble clef, probably. It is something that, you're going to see guitar players reading, you're going to see saxophone players reading, you're going to be seeing flute, clarinet, you're going to see trumpet players playing, French horn. You're going to see a variety of instruments that use the treble clef. This is solely because they play in a register, which means that they tend to have higher notes versus lower notes. And so they stick them in this register for the treble clef. Yeah. This is the bass clef right here. Okay, beautiful. I love the bass clef. So the bass clef, like I said, it indicates right here. So this is what it'll actually look like on a measure of music before you start playing. We'll get into what it actually looks like here in a second. The bass clef is, like I said, it is for lower pitched notes. So that's why there are 2 different clefs, because if you had one clef when you're reading music, the notes would be incredibly long. They wouldn't be on the staff necessarily. They would be either way up above the bass clef or way below the treble clef. This allows us to break down music without having to look way up on the chart for reading or way down. This allows us to keep it all together. So the entire staff is a guide for reading and writing music in the lower register. Notes are read as either lower or higher in pitch based on their position of the staff, like I was just explaining. That's what the bass clef does. Commonly used for cello or the double bass, which is going to be like your jazz bass, the big guy, bass guitar, the bassoon, trombone, and tuba. These low end instruments that need to be in this register because it is geared towards writing for the lower register. And the left-handed part of the keyboard, like I was explaining in the slide before, this is going to allow you to read the notes on your left hand on the lower part of the keyboard, so, or piano, whichever. So yeah, these are the two most common clefs that we're going to see in music. Depending on the instrument that you choose, unless it's piano, you're going to read one or the other, I believe. You're either going to be a treble clef person or a bass clef person or both, whatever you're into. But when you're playing your musical role, you will be assigned in your sheet music per the instrument, bass clef or treble clef. All right, here we go. The treble clef note placement. So on the left here, just above me here on the slide, I've got, let's see here if I can move this indicator, if it'll follow me. Okay, right here, right where the laser pointer is. It says, "Every good boy does fine." And this corresponds to the notes on the lines, okay, of the staff here. When we're reading notes, we're reading it with these lines here. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 lines. Let's see if I can get to it here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 lines, okay? So these are just real simple acronyms or things to help you remember as you're going and you're looking at a piece of music that you've never read before. If you can remember, "Every good boy does fine" for the lines, this will help you tremendously. It's a real quick way to get these notes straight here on this this measure here, this staff here. Just quickly in your mind, just when you see a line, to go, "Every good boy does fine." This really helps. Just quickly progress you along. It's going to take time, obviously, but you just go through "Every good boy does fine, every good boy does fine" on the lines, and it's very simple. Starting with the E on the lower part of the register, the G, the B, the D, and the F, okay? So as the notes progress up, I'm not trying to get out of sync here with you, but as the notes progress up, the E to the G to the B to the D to the F, the note is actually getting higher as well. And as you see here, they wrote it in the whole notes that we saw earlier, so these would be the longest duration. All right, now below here, you have what we call face. This one is very easy to remember. F-A-C-E. And these are going to be located, there's 4 of them, okay, in between the lines, okay? And as I stated just a second ago, as the notes progress up, they're trending upwards, they are getting higher. So this is F is lower musically than the E, okay? So as they go up, they are trending upwards, all right? The letter face, corresponds to the spaces from the bottom to the top. Very simple, easy. These are whole notes again. And pertaining to your instrument, they're going to either be played in different positions on the neck, different fingerings for the saxophones or clarinets, trumpets. Per note is going to be a different fingering. I think the thing that maybe helps some of us the easiest is to understand patterns in which the fingerings are laid out, to remember exactly where they are. But just for the sake of learning to read sheet music first, these acronyms will help you a ton. The more you do them, the quicker you get. All right. This is the bass clef note placement here. So we'll start up here at the top. Again, these are the lines. There are 5 of them. Say, So I gave you two different acronyms here for the bass clef. You notice that the notes are different here. From this slide, okay, the bass clef to the treble clef, okay. So instead of an E, we're starting with a G. So good boys do fine always. Very simple. Good boys do fine always. Again, the bass clef and treble clef share in the fact that as they're trending upwards, the notes are getting higher. We're starting with a low G, ending with a high A here. This one is a little more, it's not face, so it's not as easy, but it's pretty easy. All cows eat grass, pretty simple. And again, it's in the space, trending upwards, starting with the A to the G. If you notice how these are written, they are whole notes. But the bass clef is, everything is shifted on the staff versus the treble clef. That's why they are different note placement and names on the staff here. It's a little confusing at first, but once you start to understand these acronyms, they come in clutch. Another thing I want to point out here, because this is a great example of restarting your note naming. So we would go, just for the sake of seeing what would happen here, we would go G as being the highest note, and then it resets here, and then we start at an A. You notice how the A here on the all cows eat grass is in the hole here. We're going to go from a G, and then we're restarting at A. You know, you can sit here and try to count per line and then get it down, and the repetition is going to help with you just seeing it and knowing it. But we're going to go G, then we're going to, right where the laser pointer is here, would go in A, as you see here below, the A, C, E, G. Then we're going to go B, then we're going to go C, and a D, and an F, and a G, again, see, G, but we're playing a G up here, just as you see below, the A, C, E, G, and it resets to an A. So we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Doesn't go any higher. There's no H. There's no J, K, L, M, N, O, P. There, it ends at G. It starts at A. Pretty simple. And as the notes would trend upwards here, we're going to go A, then B, C, and D. Okay? And what ends up happening is you get these notes, and this staff basically extends up, and the note will look like a whole note, and it'll have a line through it. Pretty simple. So you can just sit there and you can count the lines and go G, B, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but that takes a lot of time. So if you can just start here in between this standard 5 lines here and just get it down pat to where all cows eat grass on the bass clef. You just see it in the hole there, and you just nail it quickly. All cows eat grass, all cows eat grass, good boys do fine always. And then as well as the treble clef rudiments, it really speeds the process up when you have just those things ingrained in your mind. Pretty awesome. So that is the bass clef note placement. Reading, treble, clef, and counting. So here we go. We're at our final slides here. This is kind of us putting it together, and I'm going to explain this is what it looks like when you're actually going to be reading a piece of music here. So music is based on the time signatures as well as broken up into measures. So if you look over here to your left, just above my video screen here, you see a 4 and a 4. Okay. So it's going to be a 4 beats, okay, per measure here. This is a common time signature. So you're going to have 4 quarter notes per measure, okay? So in here, a measure is divided, multiple measures, sorry, is divided here. You see this line right here? That breaks it up. That breaks up the staff. Okay? So, quickly, we will go through this. So it's all completed. It completed 2 measures here. Take a look at this short piece below and see if you can read the treble clef note and names. I have them already written. Remember, this one's super easy. The gaps are going to be face. This one actually doesn't have any notes on the lines, but just for the sake of understanding what this looks like and reading it, I think this does a nice job of just showing, and especially with face, because face is going to be fairly easy to remember. I think there's only one tricky note, the upper G here, where we're going to have to do a little bit of counting or numbering upwards from the G, from the E. So here we're starting with an F, remember face, the gap here, A, F, A, E, face ends with an E, and a C. Okay, then we restart here with a C, then an E. Okay, this is where I was saying we may have to count here a little bit. So we're going E. Now what would come after E in the alphabet is F on the line. Okay. Then we have a G. That wasn't a part of face, but that's where it would start over again, right? So we got E, F, G. There's no H. Then it would go back up here to an A. Then we come back down to an E here and an A. All right. So below here where my pointer's at, this middle column here where the numbers are located, we've got the note value is here, is what I wrote out. We have a quarter, an eighth, quarter. So what we're doing here is that we're actually trying to make up a total number of 4. Okay? We're trying to get 4 out of this. Okay? So when we're doing this, we know that 2/8 notes makes up a quarter note. Okay? When we were looking at those first slides of how they're broken down, this allows us to know how many quarter notes we are adding up to make the 4. Imagine 4 is the whole note. If there was a whole note on here, it would go 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything stems from that. Okay, so 2/8 actually equals the value of 1 quarter note, remember? And then there's another set of eighths notes, which allows us 1 quarter note. So now we're up to 2 out of the 4. And then we have, next to these eighth notes, we've got 2 quarter notes. Okay, these 2 quarter notes are going to give us a total count of 4 per measure. So below the fractions that I have written out, I have decimal values, which really break it down very easily. This way I find very effective doing the decimal count, because in my head I can add up a half, a 1, and a 1, and I get 4 out of it. Pretty simple. So we've got 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, all right? And this is going to give us a value of 2. Then we have a quarter, 3, and 4, okay? Now coming over here, very simple. Again, face, a C, an E, and that high G, okay, and that E and that A. That A is a half note, okay? So that half note is going to actually give us 2 counts out of 1 note, 2 quarters. So 2 quarters equal a half note, 2 half notes equal a whole note. We're trending upwards here. So we've got 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 again. So if we added up these fractions here, very simple. Half and a half is a whole, right? A half and a half is a whole, right? Which gives us 2 counts. 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and then we end with the 2 value. So that gives us a total of 4. As I wrote, count the note values to equal a total of 4 beats. Notice the time signature is 4/4, which means a total of 4 beats per measure. Very simple. This is common time. This is something you're going to see that a lot. This 2/4 is another one, and 3/4 is another one. So 2/4, it would just basically be a total value of 2 quarter notes per measure. Does that make sense? And then 3/4 would be 3 per measure. A little bit not necessarily confusing, but this is all for musical phrasing, rhythm actually. These different time signatures allow us to condense, as well as like I said, give it some structure where parts are different. You sometimes in sheet music you can get to where there are a little bit of the time signature will change in the middle of a song, and you end up actually getting to either a faster part of the song, a different rhythm section of it. Instead of hitting a quarter note 1, 2, 3, 4, you can actually do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which would be like a 6/8 time signature. So that is how things change: 6/8, 3/4, 2/4, 4/4. It's very this is very practical. This is just a standard time signature, very easy to learn with. Yeah. All right, reading the bass clef and counting. Again, the same deal, except for this time I set it up to where we are on the lines, and guess what? We're in a different clef. The notes are different. I wrote up here again. Remember that good boys do fine always for the notes on the lines or the end of the staff, and all cows eat grass for notes in the space between the lines. So pretty easy to remember here. We've got a G for good boys do fine always, a B, a G, a B, an F, and an A. All right, pretty simple here. I don't think, none of them go past the A. But if we were to go past the A here, this is the same as the treble clef. We're going to start over again. Okay, but this way it's the other way. Okay, so we're going G to A, and B, C, D, E, F, G, A. We're not going H, J, K, L, M, N, O, or P. We're just stopping at G, resetting with an A. Again, this is going to be a little more different. Here we go. We got a D, a B, a D, an F, and a B. The counting is the same as the last one, so again, we'll go over it real quickly. Again, 4/4 time. We want 4 whole beats out of this. A total of 4 per measure. Measures are broken up here. Music and math kind of go hand in hand, for sure, with counting and adding, because there are instances where there are little dots that are added to notes that allow them to be their value plus an eighth, or what depends on the value of the note. But so here we would go, we got an eighth note, eighth note, eighth note, eighth note, quarter, quarter. So we're going to go 0.5 plus 0.5 gives us a single quarter note. So that we get 1. Boom, there's 1 out of the 4. So we go 4 minus 1. We've got 3 left. A half, and a half is 2. Boom, another 1 out of the 4. So we'll take that from 3 down to 2. And now we have 2 beats left. And you got 1 and 2. Again here. A half and a half is 1. We'll take that out of the 4. That leaves us with 3 beats left. A half and a half is another 1. That takes it out of the 3. That gives us 2 left. Boom. Then we've got the big guy right here. We got the half note, which is going to allow us to get 2 beats out of it. And it's pretty straightforward. I think just doing some of these smaller measurements, just getting down pat, writing out these things, using these acronyms are super helpful. Quickly get it diagnosed. Get your notes, get them placed. And then the breaking down of the note values is very simple. Once you get rolling here, especially if you're using the fractions, to break down exactly where you're at and how many notes per measure if you're writing music, you know where to put this guy right here, okay, and to finish the measure. One thing I want to add here, I know that this is our first time through here, but if you reach, you need to end every measure with 4 beats. If it's in 4/4, it's got to end at 4. As well as the end of the score, whatever you're writing needs to end whole. Whether you add a rest in there, like if you only have 3 beats for some reason, you're writing a song and it ends with 3 beats, 3 quarter notes, beep, 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 rest on the 4th, you need to put that rest in there. The music does not just all of a sudden just stop. It is rounded to completion. So we need each measure to equal 4. If it does end up carrying over, there are tie bars. That is getting a little bit more in depth, but this is a real basic, like I said, overview, a quick slideshow, and just really getting your fundamentals down with counting, note placement, understanding the difference between a bass clef, a treble clef, and the fun part is you get to decide, where do you want to live for a little bit. Do you want to live in the bass world? Do you want to live in the treble world? That is all pertaining to the instruments you're playing. So this is just a quick little overview, and I hope you find it useful. Thank you. And here's the Works Cited page here. Beautiful. Thank you for watching.